side, I might like do a story and it airs at 5.
All right.
And like no one sees it.
So you're like, don't screw up, because if we catch a gaffe, we're gonna keep repeating it.
If anyone's gonna mess up, it's gonna be me. So none of it is live, and you can look at me, and if you mess up, just say I don't want to. Can I say that again?
Yeah, sure.
But just know that like we do everything shorter.
Yeah.
So, but you get more.
I'm comfortable with that, and I will try to provide succinct descriptions whenever I can.
Well, don't worry. We'll cut you out. So it's
okay. Great. That's fine.
Don't worry about that.
So here's how it works.
Yeah. And the good news is that there are like all kinds of platforms too. So like they might do like a web only video or like a social video or something too. So.
Excellent. All right.
The first question is always easy. What's your first and last name and your title?
My name is Nathan Kuntz, and I'm the president and CEO of Kymeta.
And will you spell your name for me? I know the spelling, but just in case an editor watches this.
Sure. Nathan is my first name, last name Kundtz.
Okay. How long have you been in this space?
In this building?
Oh, I meant like in what you do for a living.
That's an interesting question. So, because what's happened in my career is it has evolved into this. This was born out of the work that I did as a graduate student, and so I began work in metamaterials as a graduate student actually in 2008, and so in that sense, just over 9 years now.
Okay. And then, how did Kymeta launch?
So the way that Kymeta came to be is that Intellectual Ventures was actually investing in a field called metamaterials, where all of these new electromagnetic phenomena were really popping up. So they were acquiring intellectual property and spending time thinking about how that could be used. Ultimately, they asked me to join them and help them identify the best ways to productize that technology. And so I was brought out of Duke University and started to work with them in doing exactly that. We identified a number of different ways in which we could carry their investments forward, and this was our favorite by far. And so we began to incubate this technology at their labs. And we incubated there for about 2 years before we reached a state of the technology that was mature enough to justify the creation of a company. And so in 2012, we formed Kymeta and began to address satellite communications specifically.
Gotcha. What does Kymeta mean?
It's a great question. We went for the most pretentious name we could possibly think of. So Kyma is actually wave in Greek, and then meta for metamaterials, and that comes together to make Kymeta.
Hey, that's cool. That's cool, I think. Just for anyone who doesn't know, because I always say, we kind of have like this 30,000 foot view. What is metamaterial at the heart of it?
That is both an easy question and a hard question at the same time. Metamaterials, in my mind, are a lot like nanotechnology in terms of the term. So nanotechnology isn't a particular thing, it's a set of tools that we use to design and build a wide variety of products. So metamaterials is a field of study in which a series of design tools have really come out and are being applied in a wide variety of ways. They largely revolve around the interactions of many, many individual elements and some sort of wave phenomena, particularly electromagnetics. One way to think about that is artificially designing atoms and then being able to drop them in and get them to behave together in a coherent way as if they were just an actual material.
Before we get to your product, can you give us an example of metamaterials that we would be using maybe in an everyday kind of setting?
The short answer is no. Okay. This is in many ways one of the first applications that's really seeing the light of day for that technology. So the first phenomena that were explored in metamaterials were things like negative index materials, where the speed of light actually goes negative in the material, which has all sorts of strange phenomena associated. And then cloaking. You may have heard about the cloaking work that was done in Duke, where we actually could bend light around an object, effectively rendering it invisible. And so those were phenomena that really helped to underline that we were able to do things with the tool set that were otherwise impossible. but they weren't really practical. So there wasn't an obvious application where you say, okay, there's a reason I need that kind of microwave cloak at that performance level.
I'd like to be cloaked. I mean, now.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Like so, the Harry Potter cloak where you throw it over your head. Yeah, that's fun. This isn't that. We're talking about microwave cloaking. It's fairly narrow band, and so finding the right application areas is tricky.
I gotcha. Well, tell me what you have been up to and how. Should I call it like a flat satellite, or I mean, tell me about the product and like what you have been up to.
Absolutely. So let me couch what we're doing in maybe just some useful context.
Okay.
So we're working in satellite communications, and the important thing to understand about satellite communications is that most of the world's spectrum, which is what we use for wireless communications, is sitting at frequencies that really are only accessible via satellite. So these higher frequency bands are widely available via satellite, but don't work very well terrestrially. And so for that reason, the terrestrial communications has always been restricted in terms of the bandwidth that they have available, while satellites have not been. Now, the beauty of that is that you get ubiquitous coverage and you get tremendous amounts of bandwidth. The challenge has always been you need to put a dish outside and point it at the satellite, right? And so while the communications are wireless, they're generally fixed. You require a dish on top of something, a roof or otherwise, and that doesn't work for mobility. And that really degrades the value of that huge asset, right? Our sort of fundamental spectrum assets. What we've done is address that choke point in the antenna, and we're actually unleashing that entire set of spectrum for mobile applications. Okay. The core element to address was the antenna, right? So the antenna needed to become something that was not only lightweight and flat, but could track the satellite with no moving parts. And the way that we've managed to do that is by using metamaterials technology.
Okay, so what can it do from I don't know, the average person?
Certainly. Can I pause real quick?
Oh, yeah.
And could I have the coffee just so that I can drink a bit?
This one?
Yes, if you don't mind. And so we're jumping around. I know you're looking for things that are going to be self-contained, and I'm going to try to do that for you. I'm worried that I'm not doing a good job right now.
No, you're doing a great job. Do you think he's doing a great job? We can always come back to whatever.
Okay.
I think you're doing it. I'm sorry. I was just kind of leading in just to kind of get myself warmed up.
Okay, yeah, okay, good.
That's all.
Good.
Just because it's always good for me to go back and listen. Because
Yeah.
even though I'm listening to you now, it's always better when I go back and listen to the tape and I'm like,
Absolutely.
so it just gives me context.
Okay.
So I probably won't use.
This sounds more like then I'm trying to explain it to you as opposed to the audience right now.
And sometimes I ask for the most kind of general explanation, because I think some people will be like, I always say, how do you explain it to a sixth grader? Because sometimes people are they don't want to have to think hard. Now on the web copy, then I have to add more context. So yeah, that's just kind of how I operate.
That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry. I mean, I think we'll get to those key points that they'll be able to pull out.
So
sure. Sorry.
So you asked how's it going to affect normal people? I don't actually care about satellites, and I certainly don't care about antennas. So please explain to me why I should care about your company, right? And a better way to think about our product and our service for people who don't care about satellites or antennas is just a pizza box. You put it outside, it makes the internet, right? And you can put it anywhere on the planet, and it'll give you cost-effective broadband connectivity to the rest of the planet. Right, that's the magic, right? It's a magic pizza box you can put on anything. So what do you want to put that on? Well, there's a wide variety of things that you can put that on, but the one that I think is the most compelling in the long term are cars. And so we've had a partnership with Toyota for some time now to actually get this onto many of their vehicles. And them and the entire automotive space has a real challenge. Connectivity is increasingly core to how they see their businesses going forward. And that's true today with things like software updates and getting mapping into the cars. But as we get into the world of the autonomous vehicle, that demand just increases, and not just tenfold, but 100 and 1,000-fold. So they have a huge need for connectivity to the car. And the reality is that the terrestrial networks are just not one size fits all for that need. They do a lot, but they don't have the coverage necessary. They don't hit the bandwidth costs necessary to enable a lot of those applications. And frankly, there's just not enough capacity. So there's not enough capacity to feed all of the things they'd like to do. Satellite is a really important piece of the overall solution for them. And I'll give you a couple very specific examples. One is that you can do a multicast overlay with satellite and use a massive amount of data, provide a massive amount of data to people who all need basically the same types of data. Satellite's very efficient for that. So when you're sending a software update, like when you send, when Apple sends an update for their software to phones, it actually crashes networks all over the place because everybody's trying to suck down the same thing in these one-to-one sessions. So the ability to overlay this multicast layer becomes really powerful. And we think we can achieve pretty quickly about 1 terabyte per month to every car on the planet using this kind of satellite overlay. The other is simple coverage areas. So this is not purely about how much capacity you get, it's about where are you able to provide these solutions. If you're providing safety critical software, it's not okay to say, well, we captured 85% of the people, so we're fine. That doesn't work. So what do they do today? They actually have to issue recalls today, right? And they have to get people back into the dealership for software updates. In fact, there was just, I think it was it GM? Who was it? Just 2 weeks ago? Maybe Chrysler. I think it was Chrysler. They had a recall for software on their trucks and to recall everybody back into the dealership. So just changing that so that can be over the air, but still with sufficient ubiquity for those OEMs to feel confident that you're going to touch everybody is important.
Wow. So basically, you could potentially, and something that Ryan and I talked about, you could basically, just beyond that, you could do other things too. Like you could go live anywhere. Like you could solve a medical problem like around the world. Absolutely.
I mean, that's the beauty of having something that literally works anywhere on the planet. Right. All you need is a view of the sky. So you have your pizza box and a view of the sky, you get connected to everybody else on the planet. So that's a powerful thing, to unleash that kind of connectivity with no wires, independent of what geography you're in, independent of whether you have a cellular network available, independent of trying to find different data plans in these different areas, or waiting for new types of networks to be rolled out. It's just something that works anywhere.
Wow, how excited are you for this to launch and roll out and all that stuff?
It's an incredible time right now. I mean, I think it's hard to really communicate quickly how many different ways we've innovated here and how impactful that's going to be in the long term. Right, we're just getting started. So we're just beginning to begin our commercial release, and we're carrying out commercial trials with a number of partners throughout the summer, which has been very exciting. But one thing that became very clear early on is that the market demand way outpaces our ability to actually get those installs done. And so we're starting to react to that, grow the company, which is also exciting.
Cool. Is it all manufactured here?
It's not. Okay. It's not. So we actually partner with a contract manufacturer to do our manufacturing. So Jabil in San Jose is where the antennas are actually assembled.
And then what does everyone do here?
So this is really our design and test headquarters.
Okay.
We do have some prototype production capabilities here. So we do build them here, but then we hand those processes over to our contract manufacturers.
What is the dream like for Kymeta and the future, I guess, for the company?
You know, let me come back to what it is we're doing.
Okay.
We're unleashing 5,000 times more spectrum, more capacity, and doing that on a ubiquitous basis into a $1 trillion wireless communications industry. Okay. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. Oh gosh. That's awesome. I'm trying to think, you said a lot of great stuff, and I think I've got everything I need, but is there anything that you want him to talk about?
We're probably going to say the same thing.
Okay.
Well, associating the view of the sky with just connectivity and not really even needing to know that Kymeta's there, I think that conversation
Yeah, certainly.
is a
Certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the critical things here is that people don't want antennas or to have to think about antennas, nor do they particularly want or have to think about satellites. Right? What we all want is to be connected, and so what we're doing and the future that we're driving towards is the mental connection between, if I can see the sky, I have a broadband connection. Period. Full stop. And I don't even know why I do. I just know that if I see the sky, that I'm connected to every other person on the planet. That's the future, you know.
That's great. Actually, that's a great soundbite.
One more
Yeah.
thing that you guys have open positions for developers. You're looking for a certain kind of talent to be part of the kind of bigger thing that you're doing here. So you could speak to that since it's a local story.
Sure. I want to think about the right way to frame that.
I won't probably use that as a soundbite, so
Yeah.
you can
Okay.
talk through it if you want
Okay.
to.
Sure. So we recruit internationally and are always looking for the very best to join us in our mission here. We think it's a really important and powerful mission, and certainly for those people who will get excited about creating a future in which just seeing the sky means that you're connected to everyone else on the planet, is a good place for them to come.
How many people work here?
About 150.
Okay. Do you have an idea of how many people you would want to hire? Or is it just always kind of
Right now, I think
We have
there's
about 20 positions open right now.
for developers.
gotcha?
Yes.
How do you, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we would want
We don't want
That's
to
okay.
disclose
That's-
that,
okay.
right?
I can say 150 people work here?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
Constantly growing.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
that's
so yeah,
fine.
we're
Yeah.
constantly growing,
That's
right?
fine.
We're growing and likely to grow much more rapidly. It turns out it's a very competitive environment for developers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we
oh,
think
sure.
we think this is a place where people can have a lot more impact than some of the other places that we're competing with.
Oh yeah, sure. And then just for logistics, so how far are you? Like you've been working with Toyota, but like I guess like how far do you think we could be before we see it in Toyotas? Or I mean, what's the? I guess is there something that I can kind of?
Yeah, I think
Goal in
it.
front of people?
The short answer to that is we're not disclosing a specific timeline with Toyota. It's not going to be next year, but we're actively working with them regularly, and we'll follow their lead on when they want to announce the product being integrated with their
Gotcha.
products.
And is there any reason? Should I bring up? Like when we were talking, you were like, we've got like big support and big backers. Is that something to bring up? Like we talked about like Bill Gates or like I don't know, just support for this kind of technology or growth.
Nathan, do
Am I-
you want to just speak to? I love when you say he's attached to this because of what you're doing, not
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
way around.
Well, here's what I'd say. So we've raised about $200 million for the capital, and I think that speaks to two things. One, this is a really hard problem. It's a really hard problem, right? Well, a lot of people think of antennas and they think about like the whip antenna on their car, right? That should be easy. What are you talking about? That's like you spent more than $5 on that. So making this work at these frequencies that actually unlock this wide swath of spectrum and wireless connectivity is really hard. And it's something that's been worked on for over 4 decades by a lot of different companies that you'd be familiar with. Boeing, Northrop Grumman. I mean, many companies have focused a significant amount of resources, literally billions of dollars in development, on trying to make this kind of a system work. And so it's astounding, actually, that we've been able to get so far and so quickly on so little. But it turns out, of course, that comes from that ability to do that comes from deep support, not only in our investors but also in our partners in the market. So Bill Gates, in particular, is our largest investor. It's been terrific to work with him and his team. I mean, he has a vision for how he'd like to impact the world, and I think we're doing our best to live up to that.
Perfect. That's perfect. And I probably won't use that as a soundbite either, but it would be
Yeah.
good context,
Yeah,
you know,
the
to
background.
add. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
or-
little bit. It's
And it's not a focus by any means.
Yeah.
But I think that people think about like, it's kind of it made me stop and think basically. And if I'm
Yeah,
from the Pacific
it's your
Northwest,
foot in the door,
and
but then it helps
I'm
you see
thinking,
the bigger.
oh, there's a lot of support for like that's.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
we're an important part of that whole thing, right? Between Bill and Intellectual Ventures and Kymeta.
Is there anything you want to add that I mean, I kind of asked a lot of questions, but and then
Probably
we're
a
kinda all
million
over.
things, but I think we're gonna I'm gonna show you around.
Yeah.
I think we'll get. I'll have the opportunity to talk you through
Okay.
a fair amount more.
Perfect.
Both, especially my time. Can we poke our heads in there?
Sure.
Is that all right? Okay, we're actually gonna go in here.
Okay.
Go right on in.
Chamber that we actually use to establish that we can point at a satellite, not just at the satellite, but within 0.2 of a degree at the satellite. So that's actually what's required to avoid interfering with the satellites that are next to the one that we're talking to. And to give context for 0.2 of a degree, every tick of a second hand is 6 degrees. So 0.2 of a degree is 1/30th of 1 tick of a second hand in a clock. So it's very, very precise motion. And what makes that hard is that, of course, we don't want to use expensive sensors to do it, right? We want to be able to use that for the cell phone industry. So to make the system work and hold that accuracy, we have to have feedback from the satellite. And this room is what allows us to simulate that feedback, implement the algorithms that we've designed, and then test the accuracy of that pointing.
Wow.
Not surprisingly, we call it the pointing and tracking chamber.
No. This is so wild.
Right, so what you're seeing on the walls, this is what's called anechoic foam.
Okay.
And so that foam absorbs the microwave signals. And the reason that we want to do that is I want the signal that goes directly from the antenna to the horns on that side.
Okay.
And I want to avoid a signal that would go from the antenna and bounce off the wall and then hit the horns.
Okay.
Right, that.
That is so neat.
Are they?
Chamber is all.
Oh yeah. We're doing some thermal testing over here. I mean, you guys can. It looks like something out of the 70s. I don't know if it'll be useful video. Sometimes you have to get antenna performance measurements and thermal measurements together. So in order to do that, we actually have to bring in what amounts to an oven and heat up the system while it's under test.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what's, yeah, you can go past. We can poke our heads in here even. So you can see that's where that's the box. So we put our antenna in there. That's our little oven.
Okay.
We heat that guy up, and then we actually use this room. This is another anechoic chamber where we can make high precision measurements of the antenna.
Wow. That is so cool. Where do you buy stuff like this anyway?
The foams,
Yeah.
there's like 2 companies that make those foams that basically compete with each other. It's a common, for R&D purposes, it's a common material, so you can find a number of places to get it. Is the short answer. It's essentially the same material that would be an anechoic foam in a sound booth.
Yeah, I was
Sure
gonna
you've
say
seen
they
those.
look like our
Yeah.
sound booth foam, but
So-
I lived in Wilmington, North Carolina for
Oh yeah?
also, like that's when the film industry was still big,
Yeah.
you know?
Cool.
Just keep on walking by.
All right.
Did you
You're
send
fine,
me
you're fine,
all
you're
that
fine.
stuff too?
Like ours is that it's not purely a piece of hardware by any stretch of the imagination. There's a huge amount of software that goes not only into the antenna, but into the full communications network.
Okay.
And so this is a piece of our software bullpen.
Everyone is so quiet.
It's working. There's a number of things I can show you here. But this is essentially where we get boards in and test the control boards that ultimately drive the antenna.
Okay.
We have a number of additional products outside the antenna that are underway right now that we'll be releasing in the second half of this year. One of those is what we call a combiner, and that actually allows us to take multiple antennas and piece them together to form effectively a more powerful antenna.
Oh, okay.
So you think of like Mighty Sure.
And you do have a microphone.
I do. Hi guys. Are you wanting a soundless like
Not yet.
shot?
I'm-
How are you guys doing? Good. I don't know if you want to say anything to King 5.
We're just trying to get you guys working, so.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually think what we should do is continue, and then we're going to go through the machine shop, which has some things that are likely moving, and then they're probably
Okay.
testing outside as well.
Oh, perfect. Okay, let's
Okay.
do that then.
Thanks. Sorry to.
That's good.
For how hard this is to do.
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
There's a reason why it takes a lot of effort. And if you think about, one way to think about this is you're trying to get stuff to work at 12, 14, 20, and 30 gigahertz really, really hard as you go to higher and higher frequencies. And so by the time you're at these frequencies, every little thing interacts with each other. And you have every little thing becomes an antenna, basically. And so implementation and manufacturing becomes hard. And so it takes a lot of effort to get the whole thing to come together.
Wow. Okay.
And not only do you have to have it come together, then you've got to be able to set it outside in the sun and have it just work
And put it
for a
in the
long
element.
time. Exactly. And so you can see each of these chambers is a thermal chamber and humidity. And so you can actually see droplets forming here, right? As we test some of our components in some pretty extreme environments.
Oh wow. What is he doing?
So this is actually, hey Bill.
I'm installing foam.
Okay.
So I showed you two chambers where the antenna is far away from the sensor, and there's way opposites. So this is a chamber where we bring the sensor very close to the antenna, and we actually scan it across the antenna. And if you think about the antenna as a display, right? It's got the same kind of glass in it as a display. When all machine shops, if you tour technology areas, but this one's ours. Principally. So we get the active layers back from Sharp. They're actually brought in here. We mount them to our radome, and then we take that assembly and mount it to the waveguide. Those are brought over to here for first inspection before we go to other testing and the deployments.
Gotcha. So is that what it would look like? Like, what would it look like if it was connected to a Toyota?
We're gonna go over to the room.
Okay, yeah, you're going to see that.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd see not just like what would it, but like how does it.
Okay.
And so we've done
On the top or under there?
it's a purely aesthetic question and which one, you know, what you're going for. Certainly for the long-term applications, that's all embedded, right? You won't.
Said we could bring one over to you so you could have that on camera with you if you wanted to
That would
do
be
that.
awesome. Yeah. And I'll work with you on that.
Yep.
So, and I think it's important that, well, maybe you can explain, this is the first product, but ultimately for the car, right, we're going to get down to.
Yeah, so this is the first product, and it's exciting for the satellite industry because it's something that is, you know, 100 times or more thinner and easier to use than the existing technology. But for us, we think of it kind of like our brick phone, right? We're just getting started, and so over time, this will get smaller and more capable, not only with the antenna but also with the networks and the satellite systems that it's operating on. This is a system that'll work well on legacy satellites, older generation satellites that are fairly low power. So the glass is less than 1 millimeter thick, which is sort of the ultimate thickness that could be achieved. Right now this has a lot of foam, environmental protection, electronics boards that are making up that overall thickness, and over time that'll get even thinner and lighter. And then the size, the area, it's sort of like a solar panel, so the smaller that you get, the less signal you pick up.
Sure.
But as we become more efficient and use higher power satellites, we'll be getting smaller and smaller. We've already tested a 20 centimeter aperture, and we may be able to show you that actually. Thank you. So this is just a prototype, but this is actually the size that we'll be using for Toyota.
Oh, neat.
And we've already tested it with Intelsat, and it's meeting our expectations from a performance standpoint.
What is this white stuff?
Foam.
Oh, just foam,
protecting the
okay.
glass is underneath there.
Gotcha. And so, foam doesn't inhibit the glass from reaching what it needs to reach.
That's right. So so metals will shield the RF radiation, but in general.
Very cool. Gosh, this is so. And I like this one.
Yeah, exactly. So like, this is where we're headed, right?
Yeah.
So brick phone, and we're getting closer. We're getting closer. We're not done.
Yeah.
This is already something that's tested and working. So like, we're just getting underway. The train is beginning to leave the station.
Yeah.
But it's only beginning to leave the station. We've got a long road to go. We're really excited to take that forward. We think the first product will be heavily disruptive. We've already seen a significant market appetite.
Picture of genius, that's a picture of genius. He does magic with mechanical. So we antennas like the 20 centimeter that you saw, which is tested. We do a variety of different testing. And then this one is being tricked out so that we will be placing it back up in here. So it will go and be embedded, and from the outside it will look just like this. The whole secret is to make sure that you can't see it. And
What will it do?
there are two things. And